Welcome back to Kevin's Basement. Ben Ingram, Kevin McAlpin here in his incredibly put together man cave. That is really impressive. You got more stuff down here. I mean, all sorts. This is like a wing of the Hall of Fame down here.
Well, the problem is that most of the stuff I have down here is bobblehead related. And when you have an 18-month-old, they are fascinated by everything that moves. So we have to keep going higher and higher with the shelving.
Sometime we'll give you guys a tour of this entire place. He's got all sorts of cool stuff down here. And his wife has basically made him put all of it in his dungeon down here. But it's very impressive nonetheless.
Yeah.
So happy to have you with us. Thanks for sharing a beer with us. We're just going to hang out with you and talk about some off-season stuff because here we are. It's mid-November. And Kevin, you and I have been following hot stove stuff and talking about trades and rumors. And it's one of the fun things about what we do in the sense that once you get to this time of year, whether some of these things come to fruition or not, we hear all sorts of fun things. Yeah. And I think over the last few weeks, while the Braves have been able to sign free agents like Bartolo Colon and R.A. Dickey, everybody's eye is still on what could be. Could you make a trade for a Chris Sale? Could you make a trade for a Chris Archer? These are coveted names. These are guys that can go out there and be a 1 or 2 starter, depending on what rotation you're talking about. And those are the guys that you really would be excited about. Nothing against R.A. Dickey. Nothing against Bartolo Colon. They serve big purposes. But you're thinking long-term, and you're thinking very good stuff. And ace-like stuff when you think of guys like Sale and Archer.
Well, you are, and those are really the top tier of what's going to be out there this offseason. You know, we've talked on the Clubhouse Report about how the free agent market is a little more thin than it has been in years past, and vice versa. You know, you're going to have teams that are going to have guys like Sale, like Archer, some of these big names that are going to ask for the moon. I mean, and rightfully so, because teams are desperate to try to find top-tier talent, and that's exactly what these guys are. So while I'm not sure the Braves are necessarily going to land one of those two top, stud aces of a rotation, it's fun to dream. It's fun to talk about. It helps guys like us get through an offseason.
You have to start wondering what you're going to give up. If you get a guy like that, that's the tricky part because we saw something last year, in my opinion, that I don't know that we'll see again, and that was a trade that saw the Braves give up so little in Shelby Miller and gain so much. You get a Gold Glover in Ender Inciarte. You get maybe the top prospect in baseball in Dansby Swanson, who made his major league debut this year, did extremely well, and is a cornerstone for the future. Then you throw in Aaron Blair. So you're able to just absolutely, in my opinion, fleece the Diamondbacks. I don't know that you can expect that every time, but I think we've gotten to the point now where we saw it done once, so expect can it be done again? Not every team is going to sit there and wheel and deal like the Diamondbacks did a year ago, but I think the big name that we continue to come back to is Chris Sale, because unlike Chris Archer or some of these other rumored guys, I think you're talking about a franchise who is hoping to get rid of that player. I think there's a little bit of bad blood there. We heard Chris Sale outspoken about his opinions of Kenny Williams and the establishment there in Chicago, and it seems like there is a desired parting of ways by both sides, and that's why that name to me is the most intriguing name, because I think there is a significant will from both of those parties to split ways.
More intriguing than Verlander?
A little bit, yeah, because I think there's still a good relationship between the Tigers and Verlander himself. So.
I agree with that. And look, this is what you see when teams are starting to rebuild. I mean, this is exactly what we saw a couple of years ago right here in Atlanta, trying to find ways to part ways with big contracts or big pieces to try to build and plan for the future. So, again, I don't know if it's necessarily realistic to think that we could see Chris Archer on the mound in a Braves uni this season at SunTrust Park, but I'll tell you this. Don't ever count out John Coppola and the front office, because they've been extremely crafty at trades that they've come up with. They've been able to do some things, as you mentioned, with the Diamondbacks, who, if I'm Arizona and I see an Atlanta phone number calling, I may not be answering that phone for a while. Because
hitting the decline button.
Yeah, send it to voicemail. But no, I think that, don't ever count Copy in this front office out, because they've been able to pull some trades I don't think any of us could have ever dreamed about.
I've tried to do my best to cover media coverage of the Rays, Tigers, the White Sox, some of these other teams. And to me, the one thing that does stand out is Chris Sale. I was listening to an interview with Kevin Cash the other day, and he's talking about his team for next year and Chris Archer. And, of course, a lot of this you have to say, but I feel like it was legitimate. I really felt like it was heartfelt, where he was flat out saying, we have no plans of trading a guy like Chris Archer. Right. Now, it's one thing for a manager to say it compared to a general manager or someone else in the organization that wears a golf shirt and sits up top. But I think they feel like he's a major part of what they're doing going forward. They still have a very young nucleus there in Tampa, and it really starts out on the mound. They really underachieved, in my opinion, this past season. I thought their strength was going to be in their starting rotation, and they had injuries, and they had guys who just weren't as good as we thought they would be, and Archer is one of those guys if you look at his record, and obviously that's not the best indicator of how good a pitcher was, but he did not have his best season. Chris Sale, on the other hand, there's just drama. I mean, you go from what he had to say, pretty much spearheading the charge against the front office for all the LaRoche stuff in spring training, to slicing up throwback uniforms with a pair of scissors because he simply did not want to wear them, and they were hideous. So I don't blame him for not wanting to wear them. I do blame him for his method of not wearing them. Yeah. But to me, and going back to your take on Verlander, it is a lot of money that the Tigers would have to pay him, but I think there's still a good relationship there. To me, it's Sale, and that's it. Just seems like neither party wants to be there. And if the Braves could come up with the package to send to Chicago, maybe that's something that happens. But the question is, what are you willing to give up? Because the Braves have done such a great job, Kevin, of stockpiling this farm system, and to go out there and get somebody like that, you're going to have to give up 2-3 guys that make the fan base scratch their heads and say, are we really willing to get rid of A, B, and C for this guy?
Well, and that's exactly what it all boils down to, those tough decisions that you have to make as a front office. I mean, look, I know that you're looking at some of the big prospects the Braves have that are knocking on the door, guys like Albies. We saw Swanson come up this year, and you've got some of those pitchers that are starting to get closer and closer. And you wonder, okay, are these guys a part of the long-term plans? Or, as we've talked about on the show, do you flip them and basically use them as currency to try to go out and get that big-time starter that you need? And I think that there's two ways of looking at it. One, you've been able to plan for the future, and you feel like, you look 2, 3, 4 years down the line, and you can imagine where all these pieces fit in. But at the same time, you're trying to win. And 2017 and 18, you're trying to continue to find ways to get better. And guys like Sale and Archer certainly help you do that.
And it's right there in that thin margin that turned good general managers into great general managers, or general managers into failing general managers, because at the same time, it's a balance there.
Yeah.
You have to stockpile that organization. You have to make sure that your minor league system has tons of talent top to bottom. But you also have to make the right decisions. You have to hit on your trades. You have to hit on your free agent acquisitions. And when you're talking about signing free agents, if you're spending lots of money, you can't afford to fail. And that, to me, is why Cologne and Dickey are really signings that don't hurt you either way. If they're good, that's fantastic. If they're not, okay, you're not investing a ton of money into those guys. You're talking about one-year deals, options after that, and you really don't lose a whole lot. You're not in a situation where you're in a deal where you're 2-3 years down the road and you still owe the guy for another 5, 6, 7 years, and the guy's not performing. So I think that Dickey and Cologne serve major purposes. It is clear the Braves need a bridge from where they currently are to the future guys. And this isn't like college football where you can go out there and recruit the top high school senior and he'd be so good that he comes on and makes a difference for your ball club the very next year, like you would see from high school to college. Just because you have top prospects, just because you have guys who are valued as being future pieces of your organization, it does not mean they can just come up, breeze right on through the minor leagues, and be winners here at the big league level. That takes time, and we have seen that here lately because Fultonevich, Whistler, whomever else you want to throw out there, Jenkins, these guys have shown us glimpses of good things, but as far as the sustained ability to get out there and be good and compete every 5 days, that's something that's still taking time.
It is, and I think that was the big reason you go out and try to find guys like Dickey, like Cologne, that aren't going to block any of your top prospects. I think that was a major concern among the fan base is, okay, are we going to go out and find guys that are going to put us back even further with some of these big prospects we've talked about? They're not going to do that. First and foremost, these two guys are going to eat innings. They're veterans who know how to eat innings to get you deep into ball games, and they're winners. You go look at their track record, their history. Braves fans should be thrilled that Cologne is not in New York anymore. I mean, how many times do you look across the way and you see, they're facing Cologne again. This guy owns the Braves. And there was a lot of other teams he shoved it against too. But I think that when you look at what both these guys bring to the organization, they bring veteran leadership. They can mentor some of these young starters. I think that starts day one of spring training with pitchers and catchers. And I think you're going to look at these guys as role models for these young arms to look up to learn about how to be major leaguers. And I think that's exactly what these two guys bring. So they're innings eaters. They can get you deep into a game. They know what it takes to win. I think they're great acquisitions.
All right, before we let everybody go, let's just run through some of these big-time names: Verlander, Sale, Archer, any other big name you want to throw out there. If it comes down to a situation where the Braves are going to have to trade 2-3 guys, whether that be someone who's currently at the big league level plus 2-3 prospects, do you feel like that's a deal that John Coppola pushes the button on and we see one of those guys in a Braves uniform next year?
Well, I think he's certainly going to do his due diligence. He's going to have those conversations. He's going to try to find out what's it going to take, and maybe what I can get away with offering in return that you may not want to part with. If a team's asking for an Albies, okay, well, if we don't give you Albies, what can we give you instead? So I think that the conversations will continue to happen. I think that they will have a chance to get very deep in those conversations, but at the end of the day, the asking price just might be too high. I don't know if the Braves are going to say, look, we've done what we've done the last 18 to 24 months. Now let's just blow it all on one guy.
Right.
That doesn't seem to be the roadmap they've taken. So again, they'll continue to have the dialogue. They'll continue to take the phone calls and to make the phone calls. So at the end of the day, it's hard to look into that crystal ball and say they will or they won't. I think of the three, Sale would probably be the most likely that they could come away with. Archer and Verlander, I don't see those guys as being in the mix as much as I would maybe a Chris Sale. What about you?
Well, whatever happens, if you're able to obtain one of those guys, there will be a player or players that are going to another organization that people will be fired up about and saying, are we really doing this? Are we really cutting ties with this guy? Is this guy really worth it? I'm so sad to see this guy, who is my favorite player coming up, or my favorite player here at the big league level, to be going to a different organization. That's what it's going to take. If you're going to go out there and make a trade for a key starting pitcher who can be a 1 or a 2 in your organization, you're going to be parting ways with guys that really make you scratch your head at best. That's the gamble of a trade. That's what it all comes down to, and you just hope that it pays off for your organization. I agree with your assessment. I think that Chris Sale, to me, is the one who makes the most sense in terms of the Braves' ability to make a trade to bring him over. I feel like if you're trading for Verlander or Archer, maybe you'd have to give up a little bit more. I just feel like there's so much bad blood between Sale and the White Sox, and particularly Sale and Kenny Williams, that they may take slightly less. That's just my opinion on that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they would take slightly less than some of the other two. So that's how I feel about it. And over the next few weeks, we'll see one of those two things come to fruition. One thing that's for certain, there are a lot of rumors right now, and it's fun to talk about them and hang out with you guys to discuss those things. So we have the winter meetings coming up in about 2 weeks. Our next show that we put out here on 680 The Fan will be on Thanksgiving Day. So if you don't catch us, that's okay. You can go back anytime you want on 680 The Fan. If you can't stand your family and they get on your nerves, come to 680 The Fan. We'll give you a reprieve and give you some baseball talk. So
or just go to Ben's house.
Or just come to my house.
Go on over.
We're accepting everybody. Mama Debbie would love to have everybody over. So come on over to Mississippi.
There you go.
Hang out. No, so that's what we'll be doing. You can catch all our videos right here on 680 The Fan. And hopefully next time we talk to you, we'll have even more great rumors and signings and trades we can talk about at that point.
And beer.
And beer.
And beer.
Cheers.